So last night I was watching a movie while you guys are getting your coffee called Greater. Anybody seen the movie Greater before? Probably not. Random movie, Greater. It's about the offensive guard from the University of Arkansas Razorbacks, right? Donald Witherspoon or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen the movie? Didn't see the movie. You saw. You might have told me to see it. I was like, this was months ago. I was like, so I was on there. I put it in my wish list or my watch list. So I'll get back to it later. And so last night, Andrea's here all night. So I'm like looking for a movie and I'm looking for, something sci-fi, something just, I don't have to think about anything. Nothing seems good. So then I come across my list and I'm like, oh, Kevin sent me this movie, Greater. So I'm like, I'll try it out, we'll see if it's any good. If you're like in sports or like sports, like going into sports, coaching, right? You should watch this movie. And it was really hard at a few points because I'm welling up with tears. And it's like, this movie's it's a B movie. It's a low budget. But there was the message that was in it and the struggle that was taking place in it. Like, I was expecting it to go one way, and then the whole movie was about something else that I didn't realize until about halfway through. And it was really good. So if you have a chance, it's on Prime. It's on Prime. If you have Prime, might even be on Netflix too. Greater is the movie. And it was fascinating to watch because some of it was directly to what I was talking about today. So anyway, so here we are. We're almost done with Genesis, right? At least verse 6 of chapter 4. I was talking to my friend Skip in Italy, and I was like, we started back in December teaching on Genesis. We're at chapter 4, and he said, why are you going so fast? All right, I gotta keep it up here. So last week, what did we talk about last week? Because we had a few people missing. Do you guys remember what we talked about last week? Where's Rustin? Oh, goodness. I was going to pick on Rustin today because he had some really good insight. So somebody read chapter 4, verses 1 through 5 for me in your translation. And hopefully you brought your journals today because there's going to be some writing that you're going to need to take down. Or maybe some notes. So you guys here, the college students, right? You might need some note paper. This is going to be important. Genesis 4:1. John, you got me?
Wait, so right here, right? Genesis
4:1 through 5, please.
Now Adam had sexual relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant. When she gave birth to Cain, she said, "The Lord's help, I have produced a man." Later she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd while Cain cultivated the ground. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected.
Great. Okay, so the first verse, we talked about how some translations translated. Yours was, you missed it last week, so we talked a lot about it. Yours was translated very similar to, what does yours have? No, yours said, and Adam had sexual relations with his wife. What does yours say, Kim?
No, Adam
knew Eve, right? And so that's the better translation because it's closer to the actual Hebrew, which is yada, which is this idea of intimacy, but not sexual all the times. It's about being vulnerable, about being real, being genuine. And we also connected this word to the idea of yada was something that was hallowed. It was something that was holy. This idea that this intimate relationship was something that was kadosh. It was holy, that you were to it was what you did. It was how you lived. It was how you acted. And we talked about how parents, this idea of our children are always watching what we do. It's not necessarily what we say, but it's what we do, and it's our actions that teach our children how to have a proper marriage, how to have healthy relationships, how to discipline, how to have difficult conversations, how to do business, how to be honest. Your children are always watching everything that you do. And we talked about the idea of don't be a parent who is the do as I say, not as I do. We talked briefly about this idea of prayer and how Yada was connected to Yeshua's words when he said, our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. And this idea of hallowed, it's our responsibility to bring glory to God's name. That's what the prayer is about. I am to bring glory to his name. I am to hallowed his name. And that this is not about the words that I say or a formula of the words. The prayer is less about the words, but more about my heart and why I'm saying that. The intent, opening myself up to God with deep, intense focus, and I am going to pray what is on my heart and give it to God, and I'm going to then take that and live those things out. So that was the last week or two. Then we finished it up on verse 5. It said, but God did not look to Cain and his offering, and Cain was very angry or wroth, and his face fell. Who's got verses 6 and 7?
The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? You do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it."
So, why does God ask him this question? The verse before that says what? What did it say he noticed in Cain? His face fell, or felt dejected. Can you see that on people's body language?
Yeah.
Can you recognize when somebody's a little angry? Can you recognize, like, just by their facial expression, just changes a little bit, especially if you know them well. How long have you known your wife? 30 years, right? You can tell if, like, a little twitch, what's wrong? What did I do, right? That's what's going through your mind. After a certain amount of years, right, I know. Andrea and I will be married 24 years this year. And, like, by the tone of her pitch from the other room, I know something's wrong, right? Something is going on. So here's God asking, what's wrong, Cain? What's the deal? Like, I can tell there's something bothering you. Like a father to his son, right? I know I'm going to call you out here, but I know, like, when Roman is, like, angry and he's trying to hide it. I know that he's, like, putting up these walls and he doesn't want anybody knowing that he's really frustrated. But I've known him for 20 years. I know when he gets angry. Same thing with Justice, same thing with Kennedy. God says, what's wrong? And then he says, verse 6, what did it say? Why is your faith lost toward you, and why is your face fallen? Is it not if you do good, you are to be accepted, and if you do not do good, towards the door is sin? What is a different translation for that verse? Verse 7. Anybody have a different translation?
It says, why are you so angry? The Lord asked Cain. Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you.
Sin is crouching at the door. So we've talked about in Hebrew is very word picture. It develops these pictures, these images that you think of. It's very poetic in these ideas. So that is a good translation in that sense where it says sin is crouching at the door. Instantly, something should evolve or be created in your mind. What crouches at the door? No, there is a word for sin. It's just not translated right. It's the word for sin is There you go, chata, right? But, and I don't even know if that's the same word that's in this sentence, so it's a different word. Is it chata? Okay, so if you've missed the mark, you've made a mistake. If you make another mistake, I can see, here's this, like you as a parent, right? You know this. You're like, I know you're thinking about doing that. Just don't do it. Whatever you're going to do, just don't do it, right? Whether it be a little kid or, how old are your kids? Like 30, 40 years old. You're like, don't do it, right? Whatever you do, I'm just telling you, please, don't make that decision. That's what's happening here. But it's not just that. What's the imagery of crouching? Remember, who's the audience? Israelites. They're in the desert, right? An image of something crouching in this desert, this Middle Eastern desert, would look like what? A lion, right? A lion crouches, right? It gets low. Have you ever watched any documentaries where a lion has like attacked something, right? There's thousands of these documentaries or shows that are out there. Is it a pretty picture, Don? Depends on what perspective you look on it, right? I mean, I wasn't sure. There was several images I thought, oh, that's a cool one. I was like, oh, that might make people vomit. Like, it's just like, it can get absolutely terribly disgusting because a lion attacking its prey is not a pretty sight. I see, that was perfect, right? Because you're like, oh, the giraffe, it's so cute. And that's what God is saying. You're so cute, right? Cain, I love you. But there is a lion that is right outside those doors. And if you make this decision, you will be consumed. Do you ever recognize this in yourself? Do you ever recognize, I know that I'm not supposed to make this decision right now. I know that I'm not supposed to be thinking this. I know that if I actually make this decision and go through those doors, I know it's not going to be good. I know if I go to this website, I know if I click on this, I know that if I text this person, or I know if I, whatever, I know if I do this, I know it's waiting for me. But how many of us just do it anyways? I know I shouldn't eat that donut, but I'm gonna get a second one. I want to put the translations up. There was something fascinating that as I was going through the translations of this passage, because as I said a few weeks ago, every translation that I've looked at and every commentary and all the Hebrew commentators, they're like, this passage is extremely hard, and especially 6 and 7, because it's more poetry. It's nothing that's really like concrete. It is all imagery that's like, beautiful imagery, like lets you see stuff. And so all the translations are so different. And so he is lying towards you and his desire, and you must, verse is that 7? That's 8. No, that's 7. Yeah, 7. So these are all the translations. This was the hardest sentence for everybody to translate. You can see all the different translations I have in there. New King James, sin lies at the door and desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Sin is lurking. It's waiting at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Sin is lying in wait, ready to pounce. It's out to get you. You've got to master it. Sin is crouching at the door. It wants you, but you can rule over it. You must rule over it. And so I promised Dawn there would be some Hebrew in this one, right? So that I have highlighted there. You must rule over it. You can rule over it. You've got to master it. You must master it. There's one word. The word is Timshol. Whoops. Timshol, and then Lamed. In Hebrew, those are the 4 letters for this statement that we get. You can rule. Tim, Shah, Tav, Mem, Sheen, Lamed. And about 12 years ago, some of you heard me say this, there was Dr. Seekins, he's actually from Arizona, turned me on to this idea of Hebrew word pictures, understanding that, and we've talked about this before, but understanding that Hebrew is very different than English. What does the letter A mean? A, right? It means nothing. It means A, right? It's just right? It just means A. What about B? B, right? It doesn't mean anything. It's just a letter. But in Hebrew has multiple meanings, right? And the Hebrew letters actually are also numbers. So Aleph means 1, Bet means 2. So it's a letter, Aleph, Bet, B. But each letter is also a picture of something. Each letter means something. So in ancient Israel, when these people were coming out of Egypt, it wasn't just the words that were created, the words were the images that they saw, which is why we get to this crouching tiger. So Timshol was also this idea of something. And so I wanted to, before we get to the next slide, I don't want to give the answer away first, but yes, sir.
It's probably going to sound dumb, but do people still speak Hebrew anywhere?
Absolutely, yes. It almost died out, and then in 1948, when the state of Israel became a state, there was a person that had already been living there that was working on reestablishing Hebrew so that it wasn't just in the synagogues, that it was actually a living language. And now the actual language in Israel is Hebrew. That's all you speak. Yeah, I mean, there's people that speak, kind of like America, like everybody speaks English, but there's Spanish, there's Portuguese, there's, all these other languages. If you go to Israel, everybody speaks Hebrew. Hebrew. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the word picture for Tav, Mem, Sheen, for Tav is this idea of to seal something. It's a covenant. Mem is the idea of something that's massive, or it's chaos. Chaos. Sheen is something that consumes, destroys. And then there's Lamed, which is to control or authority. And so as I was looking at this, I can see how Timshol comes into master, rule over, but I was trying to look at this for a few days. And I was like, okay, what is the word picture? Because there's a picture that is being seen here, and like there's something deeper than just rule over. And so as I looked at this, I finally came up with, okay, this is what I actually think the translation is saying. The next one, please. I forgot that I had that on there. Next one. Timshol. As I looked at this, what does Timshol mean? Seal, covenant. The seal that has authority, seal, covenant, has authority to control the chaos that consumes and destroys. Timshol. The seal on you has authority to control the chaos that destroys and consumes. And you must rule over him. It's interesting because it's in this passage where we get the beginning in Jewish literature of the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Hatov. Do you remember, anybody remember what those are? The evil inclination and the good inclination. It's at this passage where God identifies, like, there's something in you. You get the choice of what direction you want to go. There is an evil inclination that's saying, go through the doors, dude. Get another one. It's okay. I know that you think it's wrong, but go ahead and go. Just do it anyways. You'll like it. It'll feel good. Who cares what's going to happen? Did anybody have these struggles where you're battling within yourself, wondering, like, should I do this? No, I shouldn't do this. No, should I do this? Should I do that? Like the old cartoon, right? The angel and the demon. I shouldn't do this. I should do this. Should I stay out late tonight? I might get in trouble. Who cares? It feels good, right? I mean, all of these things. We've all been in college before, right? These things that we struggle with, we know I shouldn't do this. I'm 40 years old. I'm 50 years old. I don't know. And it's in these moments where so many people in today's world, we say, wow, the devil made me do it. The devil made me do it. No, God says, you just chose to do it. The devil in you was trying to get you to do it. The devil in you was saying, yeah, the Yetzer Hara, do it. You should do it. But what does it say? The covenant that is placed on you has been, you have the authority to consume the chaos. You have the power to rule over this. Did anybody do the homework? Memorize the passage? I know Kim memorized the passage. Come on, Kim. Read it out. Say it out from your heart. Pretend like you don't have it on paper. Go ahead. 2 Corinthians 10. What does it say?
Wait, did I memorize the wrong book?
Did you memorize 2 Corinthians 10?
Yeah.
All right, go. Let's hear it.
For though we live in the world, we don't wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they are of divine power. They have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretensions that set themselves up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ.
Well done. Well done. Well done. You're getting heckled. He's like, that's the wrong translation. No, that was really good. The reason, why did I tell you to memorize that? Why did I ask all of you to memorize it? Anybody?
Better understand.
Okay.
You feel like your weapons that you have against spiritual attacks and warfare aren't just like physical or concrete, it's also the power of God.
Okay. What were you going to say? Yeah.
That you have the power of God.
Yeah, what's the last thing that you said that Paul says? Take every thought captive, which alludes to the fact that you have what? The authority, the power to do so. Paul's saying, Genesis, remember Genesis? Remember what God said to Cain? You have the power. You have the authority to take captive all the chaos and all the things that want to destroy it. You have the power to do these. Every stronghold that you have. What's a stronghold? A barrier, something that has chained you to believe something that is false. Something telling you you're not good enough. Something is reminding you, you remember when you did that stupid thing? I'm going to be with you always. I'm always going to be telling you how stupid you are. Remember that mistake you made? Or that horrible thing? You were so embarrassed and, everybody laughed at you? I'm going to remind you about that all the time. Paul says, no. Do you remember what God said to Cain? You have the power to take captive every single thought and do away with that and give that to God. Give that to the Messiah and say, no, I'm not going to be focused on that. Instead, I'm going to be focusing on the Messiah who brings life. I get to choose that. How many of us don't realize that? How many of us ruminate and dwell and think about the past and let it bring us down and remember and it just tears us up inside. And we think, I can't stop thinking about this. Bull crap. Paul tells us right here, no, you have the power to take every thought captive. God tells Cain, you have the authority. Stop it. Stop thinking about these things. The seal on you has the authority to control the chaos that destroys and consumes you. Paul says, because of God, you have the power. There was a few things in Ephesians 4. There was a lot of things in Ephesians 4 and 5. We could spend weeks just teaching on those. But there was one passage that I wanted to talk about that goes along with this. And I think Paul paints a beautiful picture as he looks at this. Beginning in 4:17, he says this, "So I say to you and witness in the Master that you should no longer walk as the nations do in the futility of their mind." We just said this. How many people are out here today still struggling with anxiety and depression and rage and anger and still thinking about all the things that they've done wrong and all the things that they don't have and comparing themselves to everybody else who's great because they suck? Paul says, stop it. In the futility of their mind, having been darkened in the understanding, having been estranged from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them. You are ignorant if you don't realize that you have the power to change this. You're just ignorant. You just don't know. But guess what? Now you do. Now you have no excuse to go home and say, I'm just going to dwell on these problems that I have. No. Now you're choosing not to be ignorant. Now you're choosing to be disobedient. Because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart. Some people just like to be angry and miserable, don't they? Who having become callous, having given themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness with greediness. I would rather be this way because I want more. But you have not so learned Messiah. If indeed you have heard him and were taught by him as the truth that is in Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, that you put off with regard to your former behavior. That's your old life, guys. Stop being ignorant. That's the past. That is the old you. The old man being corrupted according to the desires of deceit, and to be renewed in the spirit of your mind. This is where the battle is. The battle takes place right up here. And that you put on the renewed man, which was created according to God in righteousness and in set apartness, in holiness of the truth. We talked about putting new clothes on before. A few weeks ago, we talked about it in Genesis chapter 2, right? This idea of putting on new clothes. And it's the clothes that you wear that everybody sees. And it's the clothes that you put on that makes you realize this is who I am. I put on a uniform, I'm an officer. I put on scrubs, I'm a doctor. I put on whatever I need to put on to remind me I am a child of God. I am somebody who is righteous. I'm somebody who is to live a life that is godly, that brings glory and honor to God in every choice and decision that I make. We're facing all kinds of issues in today's society. Like I said, from anxiety, depression, to corruption, to drugs, addictions, other types of desires, and death. And I think that this comes from a breakdown in the moral fiber of who we are. We have a breakdown in morality. We have a breakdown that we are ignorant or disconnected from God. There's an author that I read and listen to every once in a while. His name is Jocko. He's a Navy SEAL. Right? And he has this saying that discipline equals freedom. And I've looked at that for a year, and I really like that. But it's been the past few months that I looked at it, and I said, it's wrong. What really brings freedom is discipleship. Same root. You can't be a disciple without discipline. What is discipline? That's discipline. To what? No, that's being disciplined. But what is discipline, Lindley?
To follow, to continue, I think, to continue towards your goal and what you want to do.
No matter what the circumstances are, that's where I'm going, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to, if my goal is to wake up and work out in the morning, I'm not going to hit snooze. If my goal is to make sure that I read every day, I'm not going to be distracted. I'm not going to do these other things. I'm going to read. Discipline is the idea of I'm achieving a goal and I'm not allowing other things to distract me from doing it. No matter how I feel, no matter what I think, this is my goal, I'm going to do it. His idea is do it and you'll have freedom. Part of that is true. But if part of that discipline does not include God, there will always be something missing. If part of that is not you pursuing God with everything that you have, there will still always be a void in your heart, wondering why I feel the way I do. Because without discipleship, you will not be able to tap into the covenant, to the authority that's been given to you. You'll still be sucked into the idea, because what does the passage say? I gotta say it again. This idea that you can take every thought captive through what? Through the Messiah. But if Christ is not a part of your life, is that even possible? Right. If you are not pursuing the Master, if you are not pursuing Yeshua, Jesus, if you are not pursuing God in these ways, you cannot tap into this power. That is the good news.
That's why it's important also that to surround yourself with like-minded people, Christ-like minds.
Oh, you can't do it without community. Name one Lone Ranger Christian. Is there a movie that's about a Lone Ranger Christian out there anywhere?
VeggieTales. I've been watching all of them.
VeggieTales. But even VeggieTales has a group of people. I mean, even Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego had each other, right? There is no such thing as doing this by yourself. You have to have people around you. You have to be surrounded by people who have the same love and passion that you have. Otherwise, you'll fail. And I think that's part of the clothing. Because part of the clothing that we wear aligns us with the people that we look. I mean, like we're wearing the same clothes almost, right? You just say too, right? When we dress ourselves, we connect ourselves with others. What are we clothing ourselves with? And if it's not Messiah, then it is something else, because it's not one or the other. It is one or the other. If you are clothing yourself as the world and pursuing worldly things, or you're clothing yourself with Messiah. Finish on this. Ephesians 6. I didn't have you read this, but I should have had you memorize this. Who's got me? Ephesians 6, verses 11 and 12. Nora, let's finish off with this.
Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
Put on. Put some clothes on. Not just any. Put on the full armor of God. Get dressed every morning and pursue God. Because there is a battle that is being waged out there. Part of it is in your soul. Part of it is the Yetzer Hara saying, do this, and the Yetzer Hara of the good inclination. No, don't do this. There's a battle that is being waged within you, but there's also a battle that is being waged out here as well. That is an even deeper spiritual battle that is affecting all kinds of people. And your job is to put on these clothes every day. My question is, do you? I challenged you to read Ephesians. You don't have to do my stuff, but I know Kevin has been reading a book, right? A Jesus Calling book. He sends me pictures every day. What does that tell me? Every day he sends me a picture. He sends me a picture because it's like, oh, I really like this. For me, it's less about the picture, but it's more of the knowledge I know that he is pursuing. And in the 9 months that I've known you, a year? 2 years? In the 2 years that I've known you, you are not the same person that I met. And I believe that that has all to do with the fact that you've chosen to pursue. And every year, over the past 24 months that I've known you, it's been incremental. We've talked about atomic habits, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. You don't just change overnight. But in 2 years ago, you are not the same person that I knew at all.
And I started coming here because of Kevin. He invited me one time. Oh yeah, come on. You ought to come, man.
He said he drank the Kool-Aid.
So my question is, what are you doing? What are you putting on every day? It doesn't have to be what I assign, but are you doing anything? Or are you just waking up and going to work? Are you just doing your normal stuff, assuming that when I just come here, everything will be fine? Last week it rained so hard. Did anybody have to drive in it? Everybody cars get stuck? You know, when it like 4 inches of rain on Judge Perez within, a 30-minute period, right? What happens to Judge Perez? It floods, right? It just piles up like on this concrete. Water just builds up and it floods, right? There's that amount of rain on a hard surface. It's not going anywhere, right? It's like growing up in Phoenix. We got a hard rain. Like we get a half an inch of rain and there's flood warnings everywhere, right? Because the ground is so hard. But what happens when it's a little trickle and it's landing on dirt that's really soft? What happens? It soaks it up, right? This is the idea of discipleship. You can come here and get a whole truckload of water just poured on you, and if your heart isn't necessarily soft, or even if it is, soft, it's all going to be washed away. But if you go home and you take a little bit each day, and you put that into good soil, you will be a different person. Last thing.
So, all turns your heart, just like you said, soft in your heart.
Right.
So my confusion, that's not really confusion, but it's a constant thought. People that I know that are religious, Catholics, but all that. So, let's take the issue of homosexuality. There's judgment, it's wrong, you can quote you in the Bible, but yet my message from Jesus or God or whatever is hard not to heart, right? Jesus is all about love. He's all about going to people to try to, I won't say accept them, but to live with them, not judge them, and so on. So my whole education is thrown out the window.
Sure.
And I question what's right and wrong. Sometimes I don't know what's right and wrong. I don't really care, to be honest with you, because I know it's right with me, but it's a constant contradiction, I would say, to my people that
Sure. And we live.
religious that are good people that are righteous people.
Right. And we got to be careful on that, because we live in a binary world still, and it's getting worse every day. And it's right or it's wrong. And I think a good example of that is when Yeshua was in Jerusalem and they threw before him this woman who was caught in adultery. Well, one, why was she the only one? Where was the guy? There's all these weird circumstances, and all of these people that the law says this is right. This is what you were to do, right? So on one side, there's this idea like there's right over here. This is must. We live in a world that wants to take that and then swing the pendulum to the other side and say, but all those people are judgmental, so they're wrong. So we need to just accept everything. Because it shouldn't matter what you do or how you feel. You should be able to feel and do whatever you want. But what does Jesus say? He says something that's very powerful. He says, whoever was without sin, let him cast the first stone. Okay, so that makes everybody that's judgmental and prideful and believes that everything that they do is black or white, it settles them down and makes them realize, okay, we're all screwed up. But then I think the biggest thing that most people don't realize is what Jesus says next. Or at least they forget, or they choose to forget. What does Jesus say next? What does he say to the woman? Go and sin no more. He doesn't judge her. He doesn't scold her. He doesn't put her to death. But he doesn't just accept what she's done and say, keep doing it, it's okay. His expectation is that she will change. His expectation is, I forgive you, you have been forgiven, we all make mistakes, but don't keep making them. And that's what sin is, isn't it? It's a mistake. We all make mistakes, we all blow it. But the goal isn't that when we know what's on the other side of that door, that we just keep going and we just keep doing it. The goal is that God says, look, pursue me. Take every thought captive and give it to Messiah. Give it to Jesus, right? Understand that if I make this pursuit, I will get stronger and I will start to realize I don't need to go through that door anymore. God wants a better path for me. There's something that's better. I don't have to be the judgmental, egotistical person that everybody else is. That's not what I'm being called to. There is this balance between love and judgment. And we don't live in that world anymore. It's binary. It's right or wrong. And we have to get back to where Jesus is calling us to, this place of walking and pursuing him and listening and recognizing it's about, I find fulfillment and joy and love in the pursuit, not in the right or the wrong. I find joy in the pursuit of this life. I know I'm going to make mistakes. So do I beat myself up because I made the mistake, or do I continue to focus on what God has put before me? That's where I find fulfillment. Alex, want to pray us out?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. Thank you for the rain and the coolness outside on the Sabbath, and just prayers that we can take what we've learned today and let it soak in through this week and add to it and come up with questions and just help us throughout this week to grow just a little bit. I ask that you bless the rest of our day and bless our conversation. In Jesus' name.
Amen.